This message from a Ukrainian drone maker to Rheinmetall CEO zeroes in on an insult. He mocked them as housewives with 3D printers. In response, the manufacturer notes his drones achieve more combat strikes in 90 days than Rheinmetall's fleet has in a half-century. For decades, global military dominance has relied on a very specific economic structure. To win wars, nations handed massive budgets to legacy defense contractors to produce incredibly complex, pristine, and expensive hardware. This public exchange exposes a crack in that structure. The multi-trillion-dollar monopoly on air superiority built by global superpowers is actively being dismantled by people building remote-controlled aircraft in their garages. The Harvard economist Clayton Christensen called this disruptive innovation. It happens when an entrenched corporate giant gets overthrown by an insurgent competitor, offering a low-cost, highly accessible alternative. You can see this clearly in the corporate world. Kodak spent decades building monolithic factories for film photography, only to be wiped out in short order when cheap, convenient digital cameras hit the market. Apply that same economic rule to military strategy. A century ago, the invention of mass-produced battle tanks rendered traditional trench warfare obsolete almost immediately. We are currently experiencing an identical step change in combat. Nations that continue to sign massive contracts for heavy, traditional military hardware are mispricing the future. They are buying film cameras in a digital age. This maps out Iran's military doctrine, relying on cost asymmetry. Instead of matching budgets, the goal is draining the wealthier opponent's resources with cheap weapons. A drone costs $20,000 to $50,000. To stop it, the defender fires an interceptor costing over $3 million. This extreme cost imbalance allows insurgents to manufacture at staggering volumes. In Ukraine, drone production has become a localized cottage industry, with small workshops and 3D printing farms churning out up to 4.5 million inexpensive drones a year. The sheer volume of these devices creates a devastating battlefield yield. These inexpensive, disposable tools account for roughly 90% of all recent Russian combat losses. The financial imbalance extends to the targets, too. Fleets of these cheap plastic drones have easily penetrated heavily secured airbases to destroy irreplaceable Cold War-era Tu-95 nuclear bombers right on the tarmac. Having the largest defense budget on Earth no longer guarantees an advantage. An agile, localized enemy can simply bankrupt your defenses mathematically. As overwhelming as that math is, it relies on human operators holding remote controls. The next phase of this step change removes the human entirely by integrating artificial intelligence. Engineers are now testing murmurating drone swarms. Much like a flock of starlings or a hive of bees, thousands of explosive-laden drones fly autonomously, sharing a collective emergent intelligence that allows them to instantly sync their movements without colliding. The tactical math of a hive mind is brutal. A defender could deploy state-of-the-art jammers and shoot down 90% of an incoming swarm, but if the swarm starts with 10,000 units, the surviving fraction still guarantees complete destruction of the target. This technology is already bypassing top-tier security. Just recently, repeated, unexplained drone swarm overflights penetrated the airspace at Barksdale Air Force Base in the U.S., a facility that houses active B-52 nuclear bombers. The base defenses were unable to jam or contain them. Autonomous hive minds operate faster than human reflexes. Traditional, localized air defense grids are physically incapable of stopping mass infiltration when the incoming weapons think and react as a single organism. The barrier to entry for strategic, mass-scale deterrence has collapsed. The ability to launch targeted, overwhelming strikes is no longer monopolized by just a handful of wealthy nations. The power dynamic has inverted so sharply that superpower militaries, the incumbents, are actively pulling apart and reverse engineering the cheap, disposable hardware built by insurgent groups. Because the components for these drones are cheap, open source, and easy to print, the technology doesn't stay locked in secret government labs. It flows rapidly across borders, straight from state actors into the hands of local rebel networks and mercenary groups. Modern hybrid warfare has mutated. A small, well-organized separatist group with a few 3D printers and off-the-shelf components can now wield the asymmetrical striking power of a traditional nation-state. This map highlights a highly specific, volatile flashpoint, the porous borderlands connecting India, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. Indian authorities recently arrested foreign mercenaries moving through these restricted zones, attempting to smuggle drone components and provide electronic warfare training. If these localized insurgencies deploy AI drone swarms, they pose a catastrophic risk to regional stability. A massive swarm could easily sever critical supply lines, like India's Siliguri corridor, allowing rebels to carve out independent enclaves before a traditional military could even mobilize. Regional leaders have been warning about this. Former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina publicly stated that foreign-backed proxy groups are actively attempting to exploit ethnic fault lines and redraw national borders in the Bay of Bengal region using these capabilities. Nations that arrogantly cling to heavy legacy military platforms face catastrophic territorial losses. In the 21st century, militaries that fail to swarm will simply be overrun.